you all for coming today. I think it's very energizing for all of you and for all of us to see so many women in the same place and also get to share stories and share the excitement of our own careers. And that's what we'll have a chance to do today here a little bit. A little bit about my background. I'm going to moderate the panel. I have my advanced degrees, a master's and a PhD in environmental engineering, and I'm on the faculty here in civil and environmental engineering. About 10 years ago, my own career path switched a little bit, and I went from a research and teaching faculty to more of an administration as one of the advising deans in the College of Engineering. And so that switched from doing a lot of research and working with the students that way to working with undergraduates and their education. And I've gotten a lot of satisfaction out of working with these students and also guiding and developing some of the programs that shape their undergraduate experience. So that's a little bit about myself. I've asked the panelists also to give a brief introduction to themselves. And so we'll start here with Anne.
Thanks. My name is Anne P. Kyle. I'm an engineer with Caterpillar, and I work with the Advanced Virtual Product Development Group. I started here almost 15 years ago as an undergrad, and I got an undergrad degree in aerospace engineering and engineering mechanics. And then I started at CAT as a practicum. We actually have a facility in the research park, and I worked there for 2.5 years. And then I got hired into their rotational program for about 1.5 years. I did various rotations through different facilities throughout the company, working as a product engineer, like a designer, test engineer. And then my final position was as a simulation engineer. I started working for large mining trucks, simulating large mining trucks, and running tests, and then using the tests to validate the models that I generated. Last year, I got the opportunity to come back to where I started at the Champaign Simulation Center, and it's kind of a fruition of what I was doing in the very beginning, because now I work, continue to work as a simulation engineer, still building models, but for a variety of products. And then the other half of my work is to bring up new engineers, new machine level analysts, and then also working with the students. And I also finished up my degree in mechanical engineering from Missouri-Rolla.
Thank you. Hi, welcome. My name is Marie-Christine Brunei. I'm from France, and I have both a master and a PhD in computer science. From Paris, if you haven't guessed. And I came to Illinois years ago for a postdoc. I was actually working at IBM in the scientific center in Paris while I was doing my PhD. So I was having the good, both worlds. I was getting paid, and at the same time I was pursuing my dream. So my advisor actually knew a team here who was doing the same kind of thing that I was interested in. So I came here to do a bit of research, and I came, I have to say, just to stay a couple of months, and then life took over, and I've been here for 22 plus years. I came back to what my first love was, which was teaching. I was teaching undergrad students for many, many years in the electrical and computer engineering department. And very recently, last year actually, I joined the undergrad programs to be one of the advising deans. So that's a new twist in my career.
Hi, my name is Cassie Rutherford, and I'm an assistant professor in civil and environmental engineering. I started here in December of 2011, so I've only been here about 1.5 years, and I did all my degrees at Texas A&M, so my bachelor's, my master's, and my PhD straight through. But while I was doing my PhD, I worked for an offshore company, and I worked for them for about 5 years and went offshore to take soil samples all over the world. And when my husband is also a faculty member here, so we're the dual body problem, and we're in the same department. So I was interested to hear how other departments view that. We're the only married couple in our department, so I think could be interesting. And we're expecting, so we'll be starting a family, and I'm also interested to hear the life balance that other people have been saying. And my expertise is in offshore geotechnical engineering, so I study soft soils and foundations.
Hi, I'm Amy Sugarneck. I guess I'm the shortest career here. I started here at Illinois almost 10 years ago, and I got my bachelor's here in mechanical engineering. And then I actually went to University of Washington in Seattle. I was looking for a little bit of change of topography when I did that. And I got my master's there with a focus in energy sciences. And I actually moved to California also for similar reasons, and I think a lot of people, have those dreams. And then I said, I got to get back to the Midwest. So I actually came to a career fair here at University of Illinois, and I found a position with Bosch, which is mainly an automotive supplier, but it's a very, very big German company. And they have a rotational program that actually specifically wants engineers with master's degrees. So that worked out really well. It's a management preparation program, and they really like to, I guess they value the master's degree partially because the German education system is set up a little bit differently. So through that program, I did 4 6-month rotations. I actually just finished them. And I was able to spend 6 months in Germany, which was really invaluable. Also doing very different roles. I was in automotive roles, and I'm actually back in that now. I've also done power tools development. I've worked with geothermal heat pump development, and I also did a sales and marketing role. So very, very different experiences to kind of get really a breadth of experience and also to build a network within the company. And that was a really, really quick way to do that. It's definitely not something, I guess, that a lot of people do with their master's degrees, but I think that a lot of companies in general are really valuing the master's at this point. So that's what I chose to do with mine.
Great. So this is really your time to be able to ask questions. So who's got the first one?
So I'm wondering, basically, some of you, so it's kind of like half are in academia, half are in industry. How do you feel your role with the other side works? I mean, I know that, so while you were going through your PhD, you were able to also work in industry, so that's a unique perspective there. But do you feel like there's still some interplay that you get to work in the other side, or relate to have connections in the other side?
I can start. As you said,
I'm going to interrupt
Okay,
here just a second. I'm going to repeat the question so that we get it on the recording and everyone in the room hears it. So the question is about is there an interplay between academia and industry, or are they really siloed? Is there, if you're in one, do you get to understand the other?
So I was going to say, I'll start. My industry experience while I did my PhD was awesome, and I'm very glad I did it. I still have connections with my former employer there. My grad students are going to work for them this summer and go offshore with them, so that connection. As well as my research is very somewhat applied, because I do offshore, and also I have contracts with offshore oil companies who are paying us to do specific research here. So they're asking a specific question, and it's not as, I would say, open-ended as, I say, a National Science Foundation type grant.
So Caterpillar actually has a facility, as I mentioned, in the research park, and I know that specifically in that facility, we work with different departments within the College of Engineering and other colleges. And we also have similar partnerships with other universities throughout the United States and I believe throughout the world. And I think more and more industries are trying to couple with academia because there's a huge talent pool there, and you guys are working. There are people that are really interested in working on immediate solutions, and so we want to still be able to tap in. I came from a product group up until last year, so I had very little exposure to the research aspects of our company, and now I'm working in the research division. And with that, I see the vast amount of collaborations that our company is doing, whether it's here or other locations throughout the United States. So it's definitely a lot of collaboration. And there's actually people within our location here at the research park that actually either work as an adjunct professor or lecturer or so forth. And our company also encourages some of our employees at this location is also pursuing their PhDs at the U of I. I have taken courses at the U of I, and I also pursued an education while still working as a full-time employee. So
do you think the cultures between academia and industry are so different?
Well, I was always more on the applied part of it, but what I've noticed is that for me the difficulty has been coming from a product group, which is very quick pace, to more of a research group within the company itself. Notice the pace is a little bit different, and so what I'm learning is that the ideas that they work on right now might not have immediate impact, and it's often kind of hard to say, well, we have customers that have their machine down, and every day that they're down, they're going to lose millions of dollars, right? And you can't go to the customer and say, oh, in 3 years I'm going to have a great problem. So there's always that, whether it's within that delay of the solution is always a problem. But companies are very thoughtful about that. We want to be the innovators. We don't, if you don't innovate as a company, you're always going to lag behind. So you don't want to have that. So there's always that a desire to collaborate. And as researchers, I think if you can kind of not necessarily tune, but sell or market your research in such a way that you can actually solve an immediate problem, that makes it a lot more attractive. And companies are willing to invest in that, and they do have long-term visions for your solution.
Thank you. Other questions? Yes, in the back.
I was wondering if the panel could share a possibly sudden big success, but also maybe a career disappointment that's kind of changed or altered your career path.
Okay, so a career success and a disappointment that ended up changing your path, changing the way you went.
So when I was a master's student, I had absolutely no idea that I'd ever do a PhD. I said, I'm getting my master's and getting a job because that's what all my friends were doing, and I was sick of being a student. And so I really wanted to get a job. But my husband wanted to do a PhD. And we were in College Station, Texas, so there weren't a whole lot of job opportunities immediately there. So at that exact same time, my former advisor won the NSF Career Award. And so she came to me and said, stay, your husband wants to stay, and I'll pay you to stay. And so that was it was a disappointment because I was ready to leave, but then I'm really glad it turned into a success, because if I wouldn't have done that, I would have never made it to the place I am now. So I think that, that changes your direction in your life. So.
Well, I'm just going to share one little thing, which maybe has nothing to do with the question, but I actually had exactly the opposite approach than you. I wanted to stay in academia as long as I could. So once I was done with 4 years, the bachelor degree, I said, well, I got to go for the master. My disappointment was that, well, what am I going to do after my PhD? So I think one of the luckiest moments is really the opportunity to come to the States and to really find many more opportunities and find my way. So I worked a little bit in industry, but it was really a research center, and that's my only experience. But I've been super happy to stick to academia, and I feel like a student every day. I mean, I'm learning every day, so that's my joy.
So I would have to say that my failure and success are sequential. I finished my master's in 2009 in the heart of the recession, and it was pretty hard to find a job. And actually, even finishing at my master's was sort of determined by the economy, because a lot of research funding had fallen out at that point. So continue on to a PhD seemed like a little bit of a difficult option. So I was actually, I worked in a produce warehouse for 10 months. And actually doing that really, it was interesting. I was working there mostly with some people without even a high school education. And I think doing that really made me appreciate what I'd been given and what I'd been able to do in my master's program. I came back here to University of Illinois, and I was able to actually use my master's to get into industry, to do something that I was really passionate about, and also to be sort of identified as someone who could kind of move through the company relatively quickly and to, I guess, really use my technical knowledge. So Bosch in general is a privately held company and spends a lot of money on research and development, around the world basically. And so I think that being able to continue in so many different fields in a technical way was my success, and really came after a pretty it was sort of embarrassing actually to finish my master's degree, and I'd done pretty well. But to sit there and go to this produce warehouse, which was very fun, I'll say, but I was worried that I was doomed to a life of not using my degrees, basically. Oops.
So in the previous position, I went up to my my manager and said I wanted to get promoted, and he was like, "Well, I don't think you're ready. Maybe in a year, maybe in 6 months," but to me, I felt like I was ready to go, so I started applying everywhere. And luckily around that same time, a position opened up at the Champaign Simulation Center. And it actually, in the last year, my trajectory of wanting to be more of a product manager, so someone that oversees a product, that was going to be my end goal, because it dealt with engineering in terms of design, analysis, testing. It also dealt with marketing and understanding your customers. So every aspect of it, I was really really invested in that. But I also realized at that point that maybe that trajectory was not going to happen at that position. Maybe I need to kind of step away, because the job that I had, was always very intense. I worked, extremely hard, and I also learned a lot, and I had a lot of exposure. But at the same time, this opportunity came in, and I kind of took it. And this actually led to this whole other aspect in terms of interacting with students, training. We're looking at bringing up new engineers. It's not, when you start into the company, you have all this amazing knowledge, book knowledge, but how do you develop engineers that are going to stay with your company? Because the first couple of years, you know where the stapler is, you know where the copy machine is, you know how to run some of the programs, but for you to be really valuable and be independent, you have to be developed, you have to be mentored, and especially in the type of in the simulation arena, you actually had to learn a lot of different components. And in my new job, I get to work with brand new engineers. Are very excited, full of knowledge, but they're interacting with them and also interacting with you guys. I was also privileged to start working with SWE at the end of last year, and interacting with you guys and just the energy that you guys bring into it. It kind of completely changed the way I approach life and my work. Because before I was always stressed out, but now in the last year or so, I see that there's other aspects of it, and that I can actually develop people and be, have a legacy in the company, and also be exposed to all these different opportunities that are within this area and all the different knowledge that and backgrounds that you guys have. So it actually, I'm kind of glad my supervisor said no and wait, because I wasn't ready, but I felt I was, and I'm lucky to work with a manager now that definitely sees my abilities and is allowing me to explore all these different things that I'm interested in.
Yesterday, one of the vice presidents of Northrop Grumman gave a small talk, and what she said is that you need to find your major, not environmental engineering or mechanical engineering, but what's your passion, what's your interest? Is it developing people, is it solving big problems, is it manufacturing? Find your passion, find your major, and then trust your career will unfold. And you might have these different paths opening up, but trust that it'll be okay. It'll all work out. Yes?
I would like to know what your typical day look like how many hours you're working or how many hours you're sleeping.
So I think this is...
Or how many hours you were sleeping when you were a grad student.
So I think this is a work-life balance question. What is a typical day like with work and life and sleep?
This is probably not a good one for me to answer first, as the assistant professor in the group. When I was a grad student, I was experimental. I had a cot in my lab. It's true. And there were times I slept in my lab. And because I had to have experiments done and I had to graduate and I had to finish. So my time as a grad student was very stressful because I was working, and then I'd come off from, I'd work 8 hours a day, and then I'd get off work, I'd go home, eat for 30 minutes, and then I'd go to the lab and work till like midnight or 1 o'clock. Then I'd go home, or maybe sleep in the lab, go home and shower, and then go to work, and then get off at 5. And I did that probably for like 4 or 5 years. So it was pretty crazy. Now, as an assistant professor, there's a lot more flexibility in my schedule. I teach 2 days a week on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I have complete control over my schedule. So if I don't have any meetings, I can work in my house on my laptop in my pajamas for the first 5 hours of the day and eat lunch and then come in the afternoon. So that's one thing I like, because as long as I have a laptop, I can work anywhere. I don't really have to be at school except for when I teach. But there is a lot, the job is not an 8 to 5 job. There are times like when there's a proposal due that I probably don't sleep very much for the next 4 or 5 days trying to get it all done. But I think the rewards are that you have the flexibility to then take a break for a couple days and things like that. So, do you want to?
My work life is much more sane than my student life was. In my student life, both in undergrad and grad school, I was, all the time. My weeks were judged by how many hours I worked on Saturday. Sunday was all day, all week. And I think that's pretty typical. What I find in my work life is that I work around 9 to 10 hours a day usually, but part of that is that I sort of steal time for myself, and maybe you don't feel like this is stealing time, but I come in every morning at 6:30 or so, and I do that to kind of be there before other people and to just kind of be able to collect myself at the beginning of every day, give myself a little bit of time to catch up on, looking at my HR stuff or whatever before I'm really getting into my tasks. And I find that really helps me be able to leave things behind me when I go home, and that really relieves a lot of stress. I think that's something that I've done since I've been working, and it makes my life so much less stressful than when I was in school, for sure.
Okay, so grad school was lots of hours, lots of weekends that were not weekends, they were just like every other day, lots of vacation that was not vacation. But some of the things that I always did, I always had this special time for myself. So, for example, I'm the kind of person who would say, well, Thursday morning, I'm just going to go and I'm doing Zumba or whatever. So I really have always had some physical activity. I'm also a person who likes to sing, so for the last 10 years, every Monday night for 3 hours, I'm in a choir, so I make this special time, and no matter what, even if I have something to prepare, I have this special time. Also like to cook, so I spend time doing that. I have to say, though, that I've been always a very hard worker, and I think if I really want to count, I was probably the one working 90 hours a week. I don't know about you guys, but that's pretty much typical up until last year. Because one of the luxury, and that's I think why I also made this decision to be joining the advising team, is that I have more of a regular life. Mm-hmm. And there is work, and maybe some week I put maybe 50 hours, 55, but it's never been 90. And that, I think that was one of the decisions that I made last year, to say, I love teaching, I love lots of things, but I need to have a little bit more of a life. And I'm not as young as you guys. But it was about time that I said, okay, you need to slow down and do something still helping students, because that has been something that I always love to do, helping students. But I have a tiny bit more sane life for a year now.
So when I first started in my previous job, so it was a rotation program, so it varied. And then when I finally got to the product group that hired me, it varied from, so we ran mostly FE analysis, and you submit something to the server, and if it crashed at 3 in the morning, you're gonna wake up and check to make sure, whether or not it crashed. You might fix it and resubmit it, because these things takes a couple of days or a couple of hours or a couple of days to run. And then I switched into a testing, more related to testing. So we would go, I'd actually get to travel to our testing facility. And those are short durations of time, but they were like 14, 15, 16-hour days. And you go there for a specific purpose. So you don't do anything else but testing. But I remember, getting up at 4 in the morning, getting there by 5:30, and then testing all the way until midnight and going home back to the hotel and then coming and doing that for multiple days. For 2 years ago, I did that for about 2 months. And then, so there was just lots and lots of hours, but I really enjoyed what I did. I really enjoyed being around the machines. I really enjoyed the hands-on work, but I also enjoyed sitting there and trying to figure out, debugging my models. So it didn't feel like it was that bad, but it also came at a cost, because you miss out on other parts of life. So last year, actually, in 1 year, I tried to finish up my master's program. So similar to what Jackie did, I was working full-time, but also trying to finish up my degree, and I did actually an online program. So that was also a different thing, where I would go work, and then I also had to watch all the lectures and do all the homework. So last year was a horrible year. But this year was the reward almost, in the sense that I am taking a class. I'm taking Spanish for fun. I go there, I learn, and it's a Parkland, so it's just like, it's just whatever I want to put in is what I'm going to get back. And one of the things that I decided to shift in the last, I'd say about a year or so, is the quality of life. You're always running and running and running. You sometimes have to stop and ask yourself, like, why am I doing this? Is there a purpose to, you climb all the way, and then is this where you really want to be? And I figured that out. I mean, I had to kind of pause my life last year because I got really, really sick. And that kind of gave me a step back and said, okay, why am I really doing all this stuff? And what do I really, really want out of my life? And, I knew I wanted to get my master's degree because I liked what I was doing in the simulation space. I found over and over again, you had to have a master's degree. So I knew I was going to finish that. I want to see that to fruition. But I also knew I wanted to travel and learn languages and do all those other things that I kind of kept putting on hold. So this year, I work in a great place where there's a lot more flexibility. The projects, I do similar projects, but some days I might work 10 hours, 12 hours, but other days, I come do my 8 hours, and as long as I hit my deadlines, my manager is very lenient on that. And I might come in late at night and work on it for a couple hours because that's what I want to do. So I've transitioned to more a phase where right now I'm really looking for a good quality of life. And I'm hoping that because of that, and I think a lot of the speakers hit on this, when you're really happy with the work that you do, it doesn't really feel like a long time, but I was starting to become unhappy and becoming a different person. And now transitioning out of that position, I feel a lot more joyful about life, and it actually opens up a lot more possibility, and possibilities that are coming from me being curious about different things, which before, because I was so stressed, I couldn't necessarily see those avenues. So to answer the question, I guess right now, my work week ranges from about, I'd say 45 to 50 hours max.
I think right now in your careers, you're working for your master's degrees or you're working for your PhDs, and you're putting a lot of time in because that will give you options later. And as you grow in your career, you'll realize that you do have control over your career and the direction you go and how you want to balance your work and life. One more quick question. Oh, I see 2 hands up, so we'll do 2 more quick questions, okay. These 2.
So women are a minority in STEM fields. Has that helped or hindered your career in any way?
Well, I'm glad I don't have to take that. So with women being a minority in the STEM fields, is that a help or a hindrance?
I'm the first female in geotechnical engineering that University of Illinois has ever hired. And there's 5 in my group. So, and then in my department, I think we have probably 4 or 5 women. I'm looking at Sue, she may know better. How many women are there in civil?
About 4 or 5. You know, we'll know we have enough women here at the university when we can't sit there and say, well, there's Tammy
Yeah.
and there's Sue and there's...
I chose a field, I knew choosing my field that I would be a minority. There were many classes I took, I was the only female. There were many classes I took, I was the only American. When I went offshore, I was the only woman. That's often been, but I don't think it's been, sometimes you have to, somebody had said earlier, sometimes you have to sort of prove yourself. When they first saw me, they say, oh, blonde female, offshore, But after they realized that I was a hard worker and that I was there to do the job and I was there to learn and I didn't think I was smarter than everybody else and those types of things, I was completely treated like a guy, and to the point where sometimes you're just like, okay, really, I don't want to know, But my colleagues, I think, treat me just like a colleague. I don't see a female difference. Maybe I just am oblivious to it because I've always been around all men. For me, walking into a room like this is more shocking than walking into a room with all men. Honestly. So I think that's just a perception.
Yeah, the majority of meetings that I'm in are all men. But I would say for me right now, in this since the turn of the century, that I think it's helped. I got several scholarships on behalf of being a female engineer, and I think that having gone through the master's degree, of course, this is my 5th department in a company, and I've been there a little over 2 years. So every time I go in, I do feel like I prove myself not just as an engineer, but as a female engineer, especially if I'm the first one they've ever had, which has happened to me. But I do think that what's happened, actually, one department I was in, I was the first female engineer they had another opening and they hired another one. And that, I think, feels good. So that's something that I have the advantage of being able to have those experiences as things sort of change in that direction.
Anybody want to add anything? I know we have one more question, and in the interest of time, anybody want to say anything else?
I actually have exactly the same experience. In engineering, you have classes, and you end up being the only one, or there are two, and it never bothered me, and I never had any bad experience. I think I always knew what I wanted to do, so no matter what, I didn't care. If I was surrounded by more guys than girls, but it was never a problem. I think that I shared this story, and I'll make it very short. I remember once I was in IBM, and we were going to present a project. And those are big shots coming from electrical company, and they come in the room and they see me and they say, "Oh, would you get me some coffee?" And I looked at him and I said, "Well, coffee shop is around the corner." And I let it there, and then I went up. All our groups were presenting, and I went up and I saw the face, and I was like, yes. And I had the best presentation ever, and I had the most questions ever. And then they came to me and they asked plenty of questions, but it was a funny moment that we deal with sometimes. But besides that, I really never felt out of place. When you are passionate about what you want, you are going to make it happen, and it doesn't matter color of your skin or the fact that you're a woman. I never saw that as a problem.
I'll just add one quick thing. If you make a good impression, they'll remember you because you're the only one in the room. But on the other hand, too, if you're not prepared, they're also going to remember. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right? You can sit there and be quiet and nobody's going to pay attention to you. Or you speak up, but if you're prepared, they're going to remember, oh, she did a good job.
And think, too, of the number of people who have encouraged you, and that's going to be many more people than the 1 or 2 who might discourage you. So don't put more weight on the negativity that you might encounter. One last question.
It seems like one of the hallmarks of this conference is the value of networking, and Mrs. Tears had talked about the value of networking earlier. And so I just wanted to know if you guys can comment about the importance of networking or how effective has it been in your career?
So the value of networking and the importance in your career.
Well, I'm going to follow up on the ratio of female and male in engineering in general. I never built my network based on gender. Actually, I always make sure that I connect with people, and this always had brought back tremendous help in many different ways. So networking is super important. I think it's important to talk to people, to connect with people, and to I think a lot of things have to do with teamwork. And I was lucky to always get connected with wonderful people, and it paid off. Connecting is a must, really.
I'd also say most of my mentors are men. I think it has to do, I am very proactive, so when I meet somebody, I try to remember and I write down their email, and then later I email them and say, hey, would you like to go get coffee, especially if they're on campus, and I try to make an effort to connect with them again. But not every person I've had coffee with is somebody who becomes a mentor, or maybe we're more peer-to-peer mentoring, you know, not always somebody who's above you, but it's like someone, like, you know, we ask each other, oh, how did this go, or how do you teach your class this way, or oh, I had a student like this. And so sometimes the mentoring is peer-to-peer, not always a senior person to a younger person. So that's another thing to keep in mind, that some of your best mentors will be people who are your peers.
I'll say that I've always had a really adverse reaction to the term networking. To me, it sounds like a lot of socializing, and that's always seemed a little bit hard. And then going through this program I've been through, I think for me it was actually, I mean, I have an immense network in the company that I'm in, and it crosses international borders. But for me, it's, I guess, making friends. So I have friends that I talk to from all of my previous departments. And I've been assigned actually an official executive mentor who's a vice president. And I've made my own mentors, and I've kind of tried really hard to not let my official mentor sort of limit me, and tried to, you know, pull my own mentors in every place that I was.
I think it was Maryland. I'm sorry if she actually, I feel like I kind of mirror what you did in the very beginning. When I got my job, I kind of had head down, I just kind of did my job, didn't go through a lot of networking opportunities that even within our company that was available. And then when I transferred, I realized, wow, there's all the great opportunities that are there, and I didn't even take in any of that. And I think had I done that, I would have probably realized all the different opportunities within our company and even externally that would have been available before I switched out my job. And in the last year and a half, just starting to build networks and actually getting mentors, not initially, again, with the point that Marilyn made, was you don't realize there are a lot of mentors unofficially that are there, and you always seem to go back. But now, I think one of the other people mentioned that they want to have like their board of directors. I think it was the first speaker. She said that you want to go back and chime in and ask questions. And when I switched this job I finally realized, yes, there are these specific people that I went to and talked to. And now when I do come across something, I find myself wanting to go back and talking to them. And I really wish when I first started with the company, I went and kind of seeked out different people. And it actually has changed my perspective and actually opened up a lot of avenues that wasn't there before. And I also have an official mentor. And it's really nice to kind of see that down the line, we worked out really well because we have a lot of common interests, similar personality, but it not necessarily always works out that way. I think somebody else also made a point of having multiple mentors, because there's different parts of your life that someone you might want to be a role, want your life to be modeled after, but only a certain aspect of their life. So there's never going to be this one awesome mentor, but multiple. And the same thing about, I think you mentioned about peer mentors. I think it's nice to, I think Professor Wagner-Johnson mentioned, like, you're going to go through different stages of your life, and I'm seeing that now with my friends. A lot of them slowly have started getting married and having kids, and we're shifting, you know, and we're kind of shifting together, and they're not any of them in engineering. And that part of mentoring is also important. You know, how do you balance out your life? How do you deal with your children? And those are another aspect of mentoring that's not, you know, the technical sense that you probably also want to seek out.
So I think if you are daunted by this idea of networking, it's sometimes easier to realize that networking is something you look back on and say, oh, look, all those friends that I made at work, those are my networkers. That's my network now. So really networking is less daunting, I think, if you just think about it as connections at work. These are your friends at work. And you keep up with them, and then when you need it, you look back and say, hey, I do have a network, and I know all these people. And I think this conference has been a great way for you to start a little bit of networking on the campus. You've been exposed to a lot of people from different departments throughout the College of Engineering and the campus. And I guess we are shifting our program to another networking opportunity soon. So I'm going to let these take over. Thank you.